Hello. Good evening. Good evening. It's hard to get all the tracking right with the book right here. I think we got it though. How's everyone doing this evening? Should give everyone some time to trickle in. Who remembers what we were doing last time in the book? Place for my elbow. Trying to find comfy spot. Comfy spot. Comfy spot. Comfy spot. That should work. So, flip through and kind of recap everything. It started off with a young, very kind of portly, fat boy named Bastian Balthazar Bucks finding his way into a bookstore named by Carl Conrad Coriander. While the old man gets a phone call, the boy is pulled to take a book from the bookstore because of the name of it, and it is named the title of the book, The Neverending Story. And he takes the book before he couldn't really think about anything, and ends up running away afterwards. He doesn't go home. He ends up going to school and finds himself eventually in the attic and starts reading. And that's what the intro was, and we got through the first chapter after that. We met a couple different ones. We met, the Night Hob. We met the Tiny, who rode a racing snail. We met the Will-o'-the-Wisp, and we met a rock chewer. And they all find out that they're all going to see the childlike empress with the same unfortunate news that there's something going on kind of eating away. Hello. Hi, Neke. We kind of last find them talking about all of that, making their way to the center of Fantastica and arriving at the where the childlike empress is, called the Magnolia Pavilion, and they're all waiting to be seen by her. They find out that she's really, really sick, and they can't go to see her, but that the entire Ivory Palace is filled with people with the same news. And that is where we left off, right at the beginning of chapter 2. Hello, Neke. Are you ready to settle in for the start of chapter 2 of the Neverending Story? Let me get you the picture that I'm trying to do every single time. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of the first of the, whatever it's called, the panel on the front of the the panel in the front of the chapter. Let's get a picture of that. Okay, there we go. I'm going to post that to Blue Sky, and then I'm going to post the Blue Sky link in here. Copy. Blue sky. The sky of blue. Sky of blue. Oh, that's not. That's what I want to click. Paste. Add a little bit of alt text. Oh, it would help if I'm in the panel for that. Okay. Okay, so what I've done is, the description of the front panel here that I've written is, it's the front panel of Chapter 2 of the Neverending Story. It is a large bee that is painted in green calligraphy ink, and below it is a drawing of a centaur and a boy. The boy's in a cape, and they're surrounded by vines. Okay. I'm gonna get that link. Copy link to post. Paste. And make sure that's the right link. Should be. No. No. Alright. Here's the thing. There we go. Blue Sky link, that should work. That did not work. Cool. Okay. So, could we get a link that works, please? Does that work? I don't know. I also don't know how to pin. But shoot, I think that you know how to pin. You're welcome to it anytime. All right. All right. I am ready to go ahead and get started, but I also want to make sure that there's some folks here to listen. Well, I suppose it will be on the mob. All right. And it's been 15 minutes, actually. 15 minutes is probably a good time to set for. That's when I start reading. All right. The Neverending Story, Chapter 2. Atreyu's Mission. Because of their special importance, deliberations concerning the welfare of all Fantastico were held in the great throne room of the palace, which was situated only a few floors below the Magnolia Pavilion. The large circular room was filled with muffled voices. The 499 best doctors in Fantastica had assembled there and were whispering or mumbling with one another in groups of varying sizes. Each one had examined the childlike Empress, some more recently than others, and each had tried to help her with his skill. But none had succeeded. None knew the nature or the cause of her illness, and none could think of a cure for it. Just then, the 500th Doctor, the most famous in all of Fantastica, whose knowledge was said to embrace every existing medicinal herb, every magic philter, and secret of nature, was examining the patient. He had been with her for several hours, and all his assembled colleagues were eagerly awaiting the result of his examination. Hi, Serenaded. So, we pick back up. We're still in the Ivory Palace and checking in on the childlike Empress, who last we left at the end of Chapter 1, with the mystery of her being gravely ill at the same time as all of the nothing was spreading throughout Fantastica. And this is the 500th Doctor that is examining her right now. Of course, this assembly was nothing like a human medical congress. To be sure, a good many of the inhabitants of Fantastica were more or less human in appearance, but at least as many resembled animals, or were even farther from the human. The doctors inside the hall were just as varied as the crowd of messengers milling about outside. There were dwarf doctors with white beards and humps. There were fairy doctresses in their shimmering silvery blue robes, and with glittering stars in their hair. There were water sprites with big round bellies and webbed hands and feet. Sitz bath had been installed for them. There were white snakes who had coiled up on the long table at the center of the room. There were witches, vampires, and ghosts, none of whom were generally reputed to be especially benevolent or conducive to good health. If you are to understand why the last were present, there is one thing you have to know. The childlike Empress, as her title indicates, was looked upon as the ruler over all the innumerable provinces of the Fantastican Empire. But in reality, she was far more than a ruler. She was something entirely different. She didn't rule. She had never used force or made use of her power. She never issued commands, and she never judged anyone. She never interfered with anyone and never had to defend herself against any assailant, for no one would have thought of rebelling against her or of harming her in any way. In her eyes, all her subjects were equal. She was simply there in a special way. She was the center of all life in Fantastica, and every creature, whether good or bad, beautiful or ugly, merry or solemn, foolish or wise, all owed their existence to her existence. Without her, nothing could have lived, any more than a human body can live if it has lost its heart. All knew this to be so, though no one fully understood her secret. Thus she was respected by all the creatures of the Empire, and her health was of equal concern to them all. For her death would have meant the end of them all, the end of the boundless Fantastican realm. This is where the green text is ending, and what's the other color? The maroon text starts up, which is back in the real world with Bastion. Bastion's thoughts wandered. Suddenly he remembered the long corridor in the hospital where his mother had been operated on. He and his father had sat waiting for hours outside the operating room. Doctors and nurses hurried this way and that. When his father asked about his wife, the answer was always evasive. No one really seemed to know how she was doing. Finally, a bald-headed man in a white smock had come out to them. He looked tired and sad. Much as he regretted it, he said his efforts had been in vain. He had pressed their hands and mumbled something about heartfelt sympathy. After that, everything had changed between Bastion and his father. Not outwardly, Bastion had everything he could have wished for. He had a 3-speed bicycle, an electric train, plenty of vitamin pills, 53 books, a golden hamster, an aquarium with tropical fish in it, a small camera, 6 pocket knives, and so forth and so on. But none of this all really meant anything to him. Bastion remembered that his father had often played with him in the past. He had even told him stories, but no longer. He couldn't talk to his father anymore. There was an invisible wall around his father, and no one could get through to him. He never found fault, and he never praised. Even when Bastion was put back in school, his father hadn't said anything. He had only looked at him in his sad, absent way, and Bastion felt that as far as his father was concerned, he wasn't there at all. That was how his father usually made him feel. When they sat in front of the television screen in the evening, Bastion saw that his father wasn't even looking at it, that his thoughts were far away. Or, when they both sat there with books, Bastion saw that his father wasn't reading at all. He'd been looking at the same page for hours and had forgotten to turn it. Bastion knew his father was sad. He himself had cried for many nights. Sometimes he had been so shaken by sobs that he had to vomit, but little by little it had passed. And after all, he was still there. Why didn't his father ever speak to him? Not about his mother, not about important things, but just for the feel of talking together. And the text goes back to green as we go back into Fantastica. If only we knew, said a tall, thin fire sprite, with a beard of red flames. If we only knew what her illness is. There's no fever, there's no swelling, no rash, no inflammation. She just seems to be fading away, and no one knows why. As he spoke, little clouds of smoke came out of his mouth and formed figures. This time they were question marks. A bedraggled old raven, who looked like a potato with feathers stuck onto it every which way, answered in a croaking voice. He was a head cold and sore throat specialist. She doesn't cough, she hasn't got a cold. Medically speaking, it's no disease at all. He adjusted the big spectacles on his beak and cast a challenging look around. Potatoes with feathers, I know, it's a great description, isn't it? One thing seems obvious, buzzed a scarab, a beetle sometimes known as a pill roller. Here's one for Candy. There is some mysterious connection between her illness and the terrible happenings these messengers from all Fantastica have been reporting. "Oh, yes," scoffed an ink goblin, "you see mysterious connections everywhere." "My dear colleague," pleaded a hollow-cheeked ghost in a long white gown, "let's not get personal." Such remarks are quite irrelevant, and please, lower your voices. Hi, kittens, and yes, hi, Cherokee. Conversations of this kind were going on in every part of the throne room. It may seem strange that the creatures of so many different kinds were able to communicate with one another, but nearly all the inhabitants of Fantastica, even the animals, knew at least two languages: their own, which they spoke only with members of their own species, and which no outsider understood, and the universal language known as High Fantastican. All Fantasticans used it, though some in a rather peculiar way. Suddenly, all fell silent, for the great double door had opened. In stepped Chiron, the far-famed master of the healer's art. He was what in older times had been called a centaur. He had the body of a man from the waist up, and that of a horse from the waist down. And Chiron was furthermore a black centaur. He hailed from a remote region far to the south, and his human half was the color of ebony. Only his curly hair and beard were white, while the horse-like half of him was striped like a zebra. He was wearing a strange hat plaited of reeds. A large golden amulet hung from a chain around his neck, and on this amulet one could make out two snakes, one light and one dark, which were biting each other's tail and so forming an oval. Everyone in Fantastica knew what the medallion meant. It was the badge of one acting on orders from the childlike Empress, acting in her name as though she herself were present. It was said to give the bearer mysterious powers, though no one knew exactly what these powers were. Everyone knew its name, Auron, but many who feared to pronounce the name called it the gem or the glory. For one sentence, the text goes back to Bastian as he thinks to himself. In other words, the book bore the mark of the childlike Empress. Thank you for the froggy. The text goes back to Green as it continues. A whispering passed through the throne room. Some of the doctors were heard to cry out. The gem had not been entrusted to anyone for a long, long time. Chiron stamped his hooves 2 or 3 times. When the disorder subsided, he said in a deep voice, "Friends, don't be too upset. I shall only be wearing Auron for a short time. I am merely a go-between. Soon I shall pass the gem on to one worthier." A breathless silence filled the room. I won't try to misrepresent our defeat with high-sounding words. The childlike Empress's illness has baffled us all. The one thing we know is that the destruction of Fantastica began at the same time as this illness. We can't even be sure that medical science can save her, but it is possible, and I hope none of you will be offended at what I'm going to say. It is possible that we, who are all gathered here, do not possess all knowledge, all wisdom. Indeed, it is my last and only hope that somewhere in this unbounded realm there is a being wiser than we are, who can give us help and advice. Of course, this is no more than a possibility. But one thing is certain. The search for this savior calls for a pathfinder, someone who is capable of finding paths in the pathless wilderness, and who will shrink from no danger or hardship. In other words, a hero. And the childlike Empress has given me the name of this hero, to whom she entrusts her salvation and ours. His name is Atreyu, and he lives in the grassy ocean beyond the Silver Mountains. I shall transmit Auron to him and send him on the great quest. Now you know all there is to know. With that, the old centaur thumped out of the room. Let me take this moment to get a little bit of tea, as I was recommended to have tonight. Reading this much at one go is... Whew. I have a lot of respect for people who do book readings and such now. It's been a long time since I've read a full-on, like, bedtime story like this. Oh, the tea helps, though. That is really nice. Alright. So, with that, the old centaur thumped out of the room. Those who remained behind exchanged looks of bewilderment. What was that hero's name? One of them asked. Atreyu or something of the kind, said another. Never heard of him, said a third. And all 499 doctors shook their heads in dismay. The text goes back to the Burgundy text in the real world, where the clock in the belfry struck 10. Bastian was amazed at how quickly the time had passed. In class, every hour seemed to drag on for an eternity. Down below, they would be having history with Mr. Drone, a gangling, ordinarily ill-tempered man who delighted in holding Bastian up to ridicule because he couldn't remember when certain battles had been fought or when someone or other had reigned. The text goes back to green as we go back to Fantastica. The grassy ocean behind the Silver Mountains was many days' journey from the Ivory Tower. It was actually a prairie as long and wide and flat as an ocean. Its whole expanse was covered with tall, juicy grass, and when the wind blew, great waves passed over it with a sound like troubled water. The people who lived there were known as grass people, or greenskins. They had blue-black hair, which the men as well as the women wore long and often in pigtails, and their skin was olive green. They led a hard, frugal life, and their children, girls as well as boys, were brought up to be brave, proud, and generous. They learned to bear heat, cold, and great hardship, and were tested for courage at an early age. This was necessary because the greenskins were a nation of hunters. Thank you, Serenaded, for the head pats. They obtained everything they needed, either from the hard, fibrous prairie grass, or from the purple buffaloes, great herds of which roamed the grassy ocean. These purple buffaloes were about twice the size of common bulls or cows. They had long, purplish-red hair, with a silky sheen, and enormous horns with tips as hard and sharp as daggers. They were peaceful, as a rule, but when they scented danger or thought they were being attacked, they could be as terrible as a natural cataclysm. There's a buzz in my mic. It's a sound for the background. It's the fire thing. So that way I have something in my ears. I could put on rain instead. Oh, was everyone confused by that except for Candy? Because that was Candy's and my idea, to switch it to a fire instead of the rain. Yeah. But it sounded like a buzz underneath of it. Maybe it was part of that. If I do that, is there still a buzz? No buzzing. Okay, so it is in that. Okay, I'll just turn that down a little more. Maybe we just have it a little louder so we can tell it is rain. Somewhere between that and that. I'll switch it to that. It's kind of loud. Okay, turning it down then. Or was that one too many clicks down? I can't tell very well on my side. One too many. Okay, I'll put it back. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm good now. I think I got it. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. All right. Let's get that back there. Thumbs up emoji, heck yeah. Back to our green text here. These purple buffaloes, sorry for the mic noise, were about twice the size of common bulls or cows. They had long purplish red hair with a silky sheen and enormous horns with tips as hard and sharp as daggers. They were peaceful as a rule, but when they scented danger or thought they were being attacked, they could be as terrible as a natural cataclysm. Only a greenskin would have dared to hunt these beasts, and moreover, they used no other weapons than bows and arrows. The greenskins were believers in chivalrous combat, and often it was not the hunted but the hunter who lost his life. The greenskins loved and honored the purple buffaloes, and held that only those willing to be killed by them had the right to kill them. News of the childlike empress's illness and the danger threatening all Fantastica had not yet reached the grassy ocean. It was a long, long time since any traveler had visited the tent colonies of the greenskins. The grass was juicier than ever, the days were bright, and the nights full of stars. All seemed to be well. But one day, a white-haired black centaur appeared. His hide was dripping with sweat. He seemed totally exhausted, and his bearded face was haggard. On his head he wore a strange hat plaited of reeds, and around his neck a chain with a large golden amulet hanging from it. It was Chiron. He stood in the open space at the center of the successive rings of tents. It was there that the elders held their councils, and that the people danced and sang old songs on feast days. He waited for the greenskins to assemble, but it was only very old men and women and small children, wide-eyed with curiosity, who crowded around him. He stamped his hooves impatiently. "Where are the hunters and huntresses?" he panted, removing his hat and wiping his forehead. Thank you for the froggy. A white-haired woman with a baby in her arms replied, "They're still hunting. They won't be back for 3 or 4 days." "Is Atreyu with them?" the centaur asked. "Yes, stranger. But how can it be that you know him?" "I don't know him. Go and get him." "Stranger," said an old man on crutches, "he will come unwillingly, because this is his hunt. It starts at sunset. Do you know what that means?" Chiron shook his mane and stamped his hooves. "I don't know, and it doesn't matter. He has something more important to do now. You know the sign that I am wearing. Go and get him." "We see the gems," said a little girl, "and we know that you have come from the childlike empress. But who are you?" "My name is Chiron," the centaur growled. "Chiron the physician, if that means anything to you." A bent old woman pushed forward and cried out, "Yes, it's true, I recognize him. I saw him once when I was young. He's the greatest and most famous doctor in all Fantastica." The centaur nodded. "Thank you, my good woman," he said. "And now perhaps one of you will at last be kind enough to bring this Atreyu here. It's urgent. The life of the childlike empress is at stake." "I'll go," cried the little girl of 5 or 6. She ran away, and a few seconds later she could be seen between the tents, galloping away on a saddleless horse. A girl of 5 or 6. "At last," Chiron grumbled. Then he fell into a dead faint. When he revived, he didn't know where he was, for all was dark around him. It came to him only little by little that he was in a large tent, lying on a bed of soft furs. Yeah, she a badass motherfucker. I agree. That little girl is so cool. I don't think we ever even get to know her name. I love her, though. It seemed to be night, for through a cleft in the door curtain he saw flickering firelight. "Holy horseshoes," he muttered and tried to sit up. "How long have I been lying here?" A head looked in through the door opening and pulled back again. Someone said, "Yeah, he seems to be awake." Then the curtain was drawn aside and a boy of about 10 stepped in. His long trousers and shoes were of soft buffalo leather. His body was bare from the waist up, but a long purple-red cloak, evidently woven from buffalo hair, hung from his shoulders. His long blue-black hair was gathered together and held back by leather thongs. A few simple white designs were painted on the olive-green skin of his cheeks and forehead. His dark eyes flashed angrily at the intruder. Otherwise, his features betrayed no emotion of any kind. "What do you want of me, stranger?" he asked. "Why have you come to my tent? And why have you robbed me of my hunt? If I had killed the big buffalo today, and my arrow was already fitted to my bowstring, I'd have been a hunter tomorrow. Now I'll have to wait a whole year. Why?" The old centaur stared at him in consternation. "Am I to take it," he asked, "that you are Atreyu?" "That's right, stranger. Isn't there someone else of the same name, a grown man, an experienced hunter?" "No, I and no one else am Atreyu." Sinking back on his bed of furs, old Chiron gasped. A child! A little boy! Really, the decisions of the childlike empress are hard to fathom. Atreyu waited in impassive silence. Forgive me, Atreyu," said Chiron, controlling his agitation with the greatest difficulty. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, but the surprise has just been too great. Frankly, I'm horrified. I don't know what to think. I can't help wondering, did the childlike empress really know what she was doing when she chose a youngster like you? It's sheer madness. And if she did it intentionally, then... With a violent shake of his head, he blurted out, No, if I had known whom she was sending me to, I'd have refused to entrust you with the mission. I'd have refused." "What mission?" Atreyu asked. "It's monstrous," cried Chiron indignantly. "Maybe Atreyu is a childlike hunter? That is a possibility. We'll see." "It's monstrous," cried Chiron indignantly. "It's doubtful whether even the greatest, most experienced of heroes could carry out this mission. And you! She's sending you into the unfathomable to look for the unknown. No one can help you. No one can advise you. No one can foresee what will befall you. And yet, you must decide at once, immediately, whether or not you accept the mission. There's not a moment to be lost. For 10 days and nights I have galloped almost without rest to reach you. But now I almost wish I hadn't got here. I'm very old. I'm at the end of my strength. Give me a drink of water, please. I'll take a sip of my tea." Through these little mini meta pauses and breaks between the two worlds, we'll add a third with my tea breaks. Thank you very much for the hydrate. I'll take an extra sip for that. Thank you very much, Ludus. Atreyu brought a pitcher of fresh spring water. The centaur drank deeply. Then he wiped his beard and said somewhat more calmly, "Thank you, that was good. I feel better already." "Listen to me, Atreyu. You don't have to accept this mission. The childlike empress leaves it entirely up to you. She never gives orders. I can't tell her how it is. I'll tell her how it is and she'll find someone else. She can't have known you were a little boy. She must have got you mixed up with someone else. That's the only possible explanation." "What is this mission?" Atreyu asked. "To find a cure for the childlike empress," the centaur answered, "and save Fantastica." "Is she sick?" Atreyu asked in amazement. Chiron told him how it was with the childlike empress and what the messengers had reported from all parts of Fantastica. Atreyu asked many questions, and the centaur answered them to the best of his ability. They talked far into the night. And the more Atreyu learned of the menace facing Fantastica, the more his face which at first had been so impassive, expressed unveiled horror. "To think," he murmured finally with pale lips, "that I knew nothing about it." Chiron cast a grave, anxious look at the boy from under his bushy white eyebrows. "Now that you know the lie of the land," he said, "and now perhaps you understand why I was so upset when I first laid eyes on you. Still, it was you the childlike empress named. Go and find Atreyu," she said to me. "I put all my trust in him," she said. "Ask him if he's willing to attempt the great quest for me and for Fantastica." I don't know why she chose you. Maybe only a little boy like you can do whatever has to be done. I don't know, and I can't advise you. One moment. Yeah, more tea. All right. Atreyu sat there with a bowed head and made no reply. He realized that this was a far greater task than his hunt. It was doubtful whether the greatest hunter and pathfinder could succeed. How then could he hope? "Well," the centaur asked, "will you?" Atreyu raised his head and looked at him. "I will," he said firmly. Chiron nodded gravely. Then he took the chain with the golden amulet from his neck and put it around Atreyu's. "Auron gives you great power," he said solemnly, "but you must not make use of it, for the childlike empress herself never makes use of her power. Auron will protect you and guide you, but whatever comes your way, you must never interfere, because from this moment, your own opinion ceases to count. For that same reason, you must go unarmed. You must let what happens happens. Everything must be equal in your eyes, good and evil, beautiful and ugly, foolish and wise, just as it is in the eyes of the childlike empress. You may only search and inquire and never judge. Always remember that, Atreyu." "Auron," Atreyu repeated with awe. "I will be worthy of the glory. When should I start?" "Immediately," said Chiron. "No one knows how long your great quest will be. Every hour may count. Say goodbye to your parents and your brothers and sisters." "I have none," said Atreyu. "My parents were both killed by a buffalo soon after I was born." "Who brought you up?" "All the men and women together, so that's why they called me Atreyu, which in our language means son of all." The text switches back to burgundy at this moment. I don't know why I switched between burgundy and maroon. It's basically the same color. So back to the real world. It is. I hope I managed it. Thank you. I will be worthy of the glory. It is a difficult sentence to get your mouth around. So the text switches back to Bastion. No one knew this better than I'm having more tea, hold on. And then I'll restart that. I hope everyone's enjoying this, by the way. It goes hard, too. Yeah. I agree. So, that's why they called me Atreyu, which in our language means son of all. And switching back to Bastion. No one knew better than Bastion what that meant. Even though his father was still alive, and Atreyu had neither father nor mother, to make up for it, Atreyu had been brought up by all the men and women together, and was the son of all, while Bastion had no one, and was really nobody's son. All the same, Bastion was glad to have this much in common with Atreyu, because otherwise he resembled him hardly at all, neither physically nor in courage and determination. Yet Bastion, too, was engaged in a great quest, and didn't know where it would lead him, or how it would end. The text switches back to Atreyu in green. In that case, said the old centaur, you'd better go without saying goodbye. I'll stay here and explain. Atreyu's face became leaner and harder than ever. Where should I begin? He asked. Everywhere and nowhere, said Chiron. From now on, you will be on your own, with no one to advise you. And that's how it will be until the end of the great quest, however it may end. Atreyu nodded. Farewell, Chiron. Farewell, Atreyu, and much luck. The boy turned around, was leaving the tent when the centaur called him back. As they stood face to face, the old centaur put both hands on Atreyu's shoulders, looked him in the eye with a respectful smile, and said slowly, I think I'm beginning to see why the childlike empress chose you, Atreyu. The boy lowered his head just a little, and then he went out quickly. His horse Artax was standing outside the tent. He was small and spotted like a wild horse. His legs were short and stocky, but he was the fastest, most tireless runner far and wide. He was still saddled as Atreyu had ridden him back from the hunt. Artax, Atreyu whispered, patting his neck. We're going away, far, far away. No one knows if we shall ever come back. The horse nodded his head and gave a brief snort. Yes, master, he said, but what about your hunt? In this world, horses talk, just as a warning for those who know the movie. Steel yourself for that scene later. We're going on a much greater hunt, said Atreyu, swinging himself into the saddle. Wait, master, said the horse. You've forgotten your weapons. Are you going without your bow and arrow? Yes, Artax, said Atreyu. I have to go unarmed because I am bearing the gem. Snorted the horse. And where are you going? Wherever you like, Artax, said Atreyu. From this moment we shall be on the great quest. Exactly, Photo turns negative. I will warn you before we get to that scene. I'll try and read ahead and make sure that I give you all fair warning for the content of that chapter. It does happen in the same places in the movie, so if you already know where, that's where. So if you hear the name of that place, that'll be a warning. I don't want to ruin this for anyone who doesn't know the movie, so that's all I'm saying. So Atreyu says to Artax, from this moment on, we shall be on the great quest. With that, they galloped away and were swallowed up by the darkness. At the same time, in a different part of Fantastica, something happened which went completely unnoticed. Neither Atreyu nor Artax had the slightest inkling of it. On a remote, night-black heath, the darkness condensed into a great shadowy form. It became so dense that even in that moonless, starless night, it came to look like a big black body. Its outlines were still unclear, but it stood on 4 legs, and green fire glowed in the eyes of its huge, shaggy head. It lifted up its great snout and stood for a long while sniffing the air. Then suddenly it seemed to find the scent of what it was looking for, and a deep, triumphant growl issued from its throat. And off it ran through the starless night in long, soundless leaps. The text goes back to Bastion as the clock in the belfry struck 11. From the downstairs corridors arose the shouts of children running out to the playground. Bastion was still squatting cross-legged on the mats. His legs had fallen asleep. He wasn't an Indian after all. He stood up, took a sandwich and an apple out of his satchel, and paced the floor. He had pins and needles in his feet, which took some time to wake up. Then he climbed onto the horse and straddled it. He imagined he was Atreyu galloping through the night on Artax's back. He leaned forward and rested his head on the horse's neck, because there was a stuffed horse in the attic, if you remember from the descriptions in the first chapter. "Gee," he cried, "run, Artax, gee up." Then he became frightened. It had been so foolish of him to shout so loud. What if someone had heard him? He waited a while and listened. But all he heard was the intermingled shouts from the yard. Feeling rather foolish, he climbed down off the horse. Really, he was behaving like a small child. He unwrapped his sandwich and shined the apple on his trousers. But just as he was biting into it, he stopped himself. No, he said to himself aloud, I must carefully apportion my provisions. Who knows how long they will have to last me? With a heavy heart, he rewrapped his sandwich and returned it to his satchel, along with the apple. Then, with a sigh, he settled down on the mats and reached for the book. And that's where we leave off at the end of Chapter 2. And the title of Chapter 3 is Morla, the Aged One, which is an excellent chapter. I did want to let you all know, since the next goal up here for the next chapter, well, actually, we do have the next chapter, which is Chapter 3 unlocked, but that one is, I'm planning on doing that on Tuesday. But if we do hit the 1500 tonight, I would be able to, let me see how many pages this next one is. That's okay. 8 page turns. So, like 16 pages. That should be okay. So yeah, I'd be able to do that tonight, but I would still want one available for Tuesday night. But that is the end of Chapter 2. Does anyone have questions? Are you confused about any part of the story? How are you liking it so far? What are your thoughts on it? And spoiler-free, anyone who happens to know about Artax in the movie, any thoughts on the horse having a voice? I'm also pouring myself some more tea, because that was a lot already. Yeah, it's gonna be real awkward. Yeah, it does. It's a rough scene, honestly. Let me see how many chapters ahead that is. Okay. Let's see. We have Morla, then we have Uragmol, then we have the Nomics, and the 3 magic gates. It's gonna be a while, actually, until that. We have a lot of story before we get to that. Right? Am I... Hold on. I can't even find where it is. Weird. Huh. We'll figure it out. As soon as I figure out we're near it, I'll let you know. But yeah, I don't think we are close to it. Oh, that's... Voice of silence. No, it's before that. I don't know where. Are we? Oh. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. No. Oh, we may be closer than I thought then. Hold on. Oh, shit. Oh, no, it is next chapter. It's this upcoming chapter that, yeah. Oh, do you want that tonight? Do you want that tonight? Anyone who wants to find out what happens for what we're avoiding saying right now, it happens in the next couple pages, it looks like. So yeah, anyone who wants that, if we hit the 1500 mark, I'll go ahead and do that tonight. I think my voice can be up to that. What I am going to do is I'm going to stretch real quick. I meant to turn the ads off for this. I will next time, so that way you only have to deal with, Actually, I can fit a chapter into an hour, and that way I can guarantee no one misses anything and no one has to deal with pre-rolls. Maybe this is better. Thanks, Kofi Streambot. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and run this. Hopefully the ads are not too loud, in case anyone has fallen asleep. Did you get the Dr. Script edition? Yeah. I wish I could have a copy of this where it had like the Arin on the front cover, like the two snakes that are out there. Because it just makes like one circle that's on the outside of the book. I'm trying to like make it a visual thing. Like, it's just like a circle that's right out there on the back of the book. It's like one side is a black snake, one side is a silver snake, and inside is just the text says the Neverending Story. But yeah, hopefully the ads are not too loud in case someone has fallen asleep, and I will be right back. Hello, I am back. Let me make it a little quieter again. Yeah. Hello. Alright, I guess that Tuesday is going to be the rough scene, and maybe that'll give people a little more warning for it, too. But yeah. I'll go ahead and finish off this teapot of tea then, and rest my voice for the rest of the evening. It is getting a little on the rough side. Alright. I think I will go ahead and end the stream and get this uploaded and then post a Blue Sky with both the first and second chapters, so that way people can get caught up for Tuesday and ready for the first big major scene. This is a really good read. You haven't heard anything yet. This book is so good. Anytime that people are like, oh, I love the Neverending Story, and I'm like, book or movie? They're like, there's a book, and I'm like, I have to just contain my seething rage that there's a whole group of people that they adore the concept of the Neverending Story, but based on this, what really ends up in comparison being this little stupid insipid movie compared to what this book really is. It's such a distilled version of it that only even addresses less than half of the book. So I am so happy to be able to share this with you. And this book also means a lot to me. It was one of the first things that I really read avidly as a child. This was before I got into Tolkien. I think I first read this when I was 8 or 9. I ended up reading a lot because I did not have a lot of friends as a child. But very much like Bastion, this book was a friend to me. And I also shared a love of this book with one of my closest partners in my life who has since passed away. And I also have the German version of this book that my wife has given me. So this book means a lot to me. And I'm very, very glad to share it with everyone. So I will go ahead and end stream. And I will let you all know if I'm streaming tomorrow. I might need time to get a handle on the packing a little bit, because we're going to be getting the pod in we'll be getting the pod in about a month, a little less than a month. So yeah, I have quite a bit to do. But yeah, I'm really glad that you all are enjoying it. Please feel free to let me know if you have questions or feedback or anything. If you want me to make a channel, like an opt-in channel in the Discord for, discussing the book for spoilers and stuff, let me know. I already have a lot of channels, but if that would be useful, I would be happy to do that. Hey, Waver. Looks funny with the book in my hand. Thank you very much. And I hope anyone who was falling asleep is doing well and getting some rest. And I will go ahead and go to our ending scene. And I will let you know in my Discord and on Blue Sky if you can expect to see me tomorrow. But unless you hear something of, a definite yes, assume it's not going to be tomorrow. And that I would see you sometime on Monday. And I will see you all then. Bye. Good night. Sleep well.